We're making butter chicken in this recipe, and whilst I'm trying to keep this as authentic as possible, there is one major change that will cut the fat, and I'll explain every single detail in the video. Let's get straight into it. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alright, starting off with the prep, it's super simple. We're going to need 2 brown or yellow onions. We can remove both ends, slice it in half, and then just peel off those annoying skins, which actually came off quite easily for me this time. And then we're going to slice this into nice thin strips. The thinner this is, the easier it will be to blend and cook. Next is 30 grams of ginger, as well as 6 cloves of freshly peeled garlic. Run both of these along a fine microplane or box grater, making sure that you scrape out all of it to avoid any waste, as these are the fragrances to our dish. And then we're going to half this, so about 3 cloves of garlic in one bowl, as well as half of that ginger, which is 15 grams. One of them is going to be used as the marinade, and one of them is going to be used in the sauce. Onto the chicken. It's 1 kilo of boneless and skinless chicken thigh. You can also use bone in and skin on. It's up to you and what you can get. And with this, we're going to dice it into nice, large, even-sized pieces. That way it will all cook at the same stage. I've also trimmed off a little bit of fat, but if you want to leave that on for extra flavor, that is perfectly fine. Once the chicken's prepped, we're going to add it to a large mixing bowl and then follow that up with 170 grams of natural Greek yogurt, which is the base to our marinade and will also tenderize our chicken. 6.5 grams of garam masala. 3.5 grams of ground cumin, 2 grams of Kashmiri chili powder, 2 grams of ground turmeric, a nice large pinch of salt, as well as that garlic and ginger powder, which for some reason I can't find the footage for anyway, so I apologize for that. And then just mix this around really well until everything is evenly coated. And then we can marinate this for about 30 minutes up to 48 hours. Also, if you can't be bothered to wait, you can cook it straight away. With the prep out of the way, place a large high-rimmed pan or pot over a high heat. Make sure it is large though and you can fit sauce in it. Then we're going to add in 30 milliliters of peanut oil. You can use any other neutral flavored oil of your choice. Add in the chicken, spread it out so it's not sitting on top of one another, and if your pan or pot isn't big enough, make sure you do this in batches. And I like to let the chicken sit there for about 3 minutes just to pick up a little bit of color. Then we can mix this through and cook it for a further 3 minutes, so 6 minutes in total. We're not cooking the chicken all the way through here, we just want to get a nice golden sear on it. Once that is done, we can then scoop the chicken out, placing it into a bowl, and then just set this aside for the time being, and it is okay to leave that marinade behind in the pan or pot. To this now, we're going to add in 56 grams or 4 tablespoons of ghee, which is also clarified butter, but not all clarified butter is ghee, but all ghee is clarified butter, if that makes sense. Then add in those onions, give it a really good mix through to pick up that marinade, turn the heat down to medium, and we're going to cook this for 15 minutes, making sure that those onions become soft, because we will be blending this, and if they are a little bit firm, you will have a chunky sauce, and we want this to be nice and smooth. I recommend giving this a good mix through every now and again as well, just to make sure we're picking up all of that flavor. Next to go in is the remaining garlic and ginger paste. Give it a really good mix through again, getting that fragrance into the pan, and then we're going to cook this for 45 seconds, pretty much mixing it the whole time just to avoid it from burning. Let's then introduce 4.5 grams of ground cumin, 4 grams of ground coriander, 2 grams of Kashmiri chili powder, and a nice big pinch of salt. Then mix this around for those flavors to become friends, and then just cook this for 1 minute just to get that fragrance and those spices infused into the onions, garlic, and ginger. To this now, add in 800 grams, which is 2 cans of diced tomatoes. I also recommend adding in about 60 milliliters of water just to rinse out the can. Then mix this all through, and what we're going to do now is bring this to a boil, reduce the heat to low, and then just let this cook for 10 minutes, which will soften up all of those vegetables even more. It will also deglaze the pan, pulling up any of that stuck flavor. Once everything is nice and soft, I recommend turning it off the heat, then use an immersion blender to blitz this up until it's a really smooth sauce. If you don't have an immersion blender, you will need to use a blender. If that is the case, I recommend letting the sauce cool down for about 45 minutes before doing so, otherwise you'll end up with it exploding all over the kitchen, pretty much like what I've done here with the immersion blender. Anyway, let's freshen this up with 5 grams of garam masala, 11 grams of granulated sugar, which is optional, and then the ingredient that massively changes this recipe is 1 cup or 250 grams of Greek yogurt instead of thickened cream. This will change the texture, the flavor, and the sauce consistency, so if you want a traditional curry, make sure you use thickened cream. We're then going to add in the chicken and resting juices, as well as a large pinch of salt. Then mix this all through and you'll notice that traditional butter chicken colours start to form. And like I said, this won't be as saucy with the Greek yogurt, so if you want it more saucy and a more authentic flavour, make sure you use thickened cream. Now another major ingredient to this recipe to make it authentic is kasuri methi. I'm adding in 1.5 grams worth. This is dried fenugreek leaves and it adds a beautiful blend of flavours. If you can't get this, don't worry, it still tastes fantastic without it. But with that all in, we're going to bring this to a boil, reduce the heat to low, and then just let it simmer away for about 35 to 40 minutes. 20 minutes before the curry's cooked, we'll cook our rice. Place a large saucepan over a high heat, add in 300 grams of washed basmati rice, along with 600 grams of cold water. I am also going to add in 1 cinnamon stick, 3 bay leaves, 3 cardamom pods, as well as 1 star anise. They're all optional, as well as a little bit of salt to taste. Bring this to a boil, lower the heat to low, place on a lid, and let this cook for 14 minutes undisturbed. After 14 minutes, we can then turn it off the heat, leave the lid on for a final 4 minutes before removing the lid, also removing all of those herbs and spices as they're no longer needed and have done their trick, obviously infusing their flavour into the rice, and then use a spatula or a fork just to fluff up and separate those grains, resulting in a really soft and beautiful fluffy rice. The macros are also included for the rice, it's per serving, and I've also included the serving size. Going back to the curry, this has been cooking away for 35 minutes. Just give it a really nice mix through to make sure those flavours are all really well developed and that sauce is nice and thick. If you find it a little bit too thick, you can add a little bit of water or stock to thin it down, which is completely fine. But once that's all done, just check it for seasoning before removing it from the stovetop. And these are the macros per serving for the butter chicken alone without the rice, including the serving size. Usually I say just divide everything by 5, but this time I have gone one step ahead and actually included the weights per serving for everything. So it's 150 grams of rice to 300 grams of butter chicken curry. You can also garnish it with a little bit of coriander or cilantro, which is completely optional, and also serve it with naan bread as well if you wanted to. But with that all done, we're then left with these beautiful meal preps that will last you for the week, or however quickly you eat them. And these are the macros for the complete dish, again, per serving. Now with these, we're gonna let them cool down for about 25 to 30 minutes, then place the lids on, put them in the fridge for up to 4 days and in the freezer for up to 6 months. Defrost them in the fridge overnight, let them defrost that way, and then you can heat them in a pan over a medium heat or in a microwave, just do whatever's easiest for you. And something like this is actually better in flavor after a couple of days. As always though, there is only one thing left to do, and that is of course, we can then dig in. Like I said before, the flavour does get better over time in a dish like this, but even right now it tastes fantastic with the beautiful blend of spices, the fragrances and everything else that's going on. The chicken is super juicy and tender as well. Now we did use yogurt as an alternative to thickened cream. This will make it a little bit healthier, but if I was to make this just for myself, I definitely would use thickened cream because it just adds that beautiful texture and that creamy smoothness to this. If you enjoyed this video, please do hit that like button, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.